This is the Power of Osmosis podcast, powered by the Vidwheel Creator Network. This is the Power of Osmosis video podcast powered by Vidwheel Creator Network. I am John Osberg, founder of Power of Osmosis, and I'm joined by a great friend, someone who inspires me, and a fellow solopreneur, and Sarah Heximer of True Colors Strategy, the chief visionary officer there and owner. Sarah, welcome to the show.
Thank you, John. It's a pleasure and an honor.
Right on. We just saw each other.
Busy, which is good, right?
Yep. Saw you last month. Thanks again for having me in to speak. What a rock star crew of students you've got in one of your marketing classes there. And they, it's cool to see in live action just how much they really respect. And, I'm doing a little plug here, but how much they respect and appreciate, your professorship and the knowledge you bring from the real world and bring it into the classroom so that they know, like, when they do get out of school, this is what it looks like. So kudos to you.
Yeah, thank you. It's definitely fun and has been an unanticipated part of the journey, but it's been awesome.
Which we're going to get into. And so speaking of that today, for our audience, our millions of watchers and listeners, manifesting that. I do that every podcast, by the way. I'm like 50 for 50 on that. But today's going to be a guide to manifesting your true north, right? So that's metaphorical, for example, but what's your truest mission, your purpose? Why you're here, what can you do to fulfill a void that's in the current marketplace? And so Sarah's going to dial in on that, and then also just embracing solopreneurship. So one person business to another one person business owner here on this podcast. So I'm looking to get into it, but first let's build a bit of that foundation and make our audience aware of who you are, Sarah, and how you've gotten to now.
Sure. So my background is such that my undergrad is in psychology from University of Rochester. And then I did the 3-2 program with the Simon School of Business. So I was able to start working on my MBA during my senior year of undergrad. And it was wonderful. I wouldn't have changed that experience for the world. But then I progressed through my career in different functions and industries. I worked at Niagara. I've worked at it was a meat company back in Rochester, which was a learning experience. I then went down, I call it my sabbatical for marketing, and worked in an operations merchandising role at Winn-Dixie as a category director. Then I was brought back to the Buffalo area to work at Rich Products and shopper marketing. Then I worked in an agency function. Then I worked at a nonprofit in Shays. So I've had a pretty dynamic career so far, and really created a nice little toolbox for myself from industries and functions that I've worked in, always trying to be very strategic and adding to that toolbox. And each position that I've had, I've found that I wind up pioneering something different. So either it's a brand new role that's never been done before, or there's a new function within that role that hasn't been accomplished before. So that kind of leads into the journey of how I got to be an entrepreneur, because I always had in the back of my head this mentor that was always challenging me and saying, why don't you own your own company? You need to be doing your own thing. And I'm like, you're crazy. Why would I do that? I mean, I know I want to get into consulting like in the fourth quarter of my career, but why would I do that now? And eventually, after all of these different pivots, I started to realize that not only do I like pioneering the roles, but I am very much a change agent, which is helpful and wonderful. And I love gray, and I love working with nebulous and not having structure and building structure where there isn't any. But I realized one of the roles that I was in, I was like, well, how much change can I actually bring to this role? And am I going to be the most effective marketer for it? And that's kind of what launched me into starting my own career, or starting my own company. So I took the sidestep, the leap of faith, if you will, and finally listened to this mentor and started True Color Strategy, which in and of itself, the name just was one of those things that kind of, what am I going to call myself? And I was putting myself through my own process, and all of a sudden this name just popped right into my head. It's like, no, it couldn't be that easy. And lo and behold, that's the one that stuck. So it's all about being able to help companies find what their true colors are. Who are they? What do they represent? Who do they want to be talking to? Who is their target audience? And how do they most authentically speak with them? So through that, I was able to build up the network, and that's what kind of got me into that NU piece of the conversation that you kind of alluded to, where I was talking to someone and they said, well, we need someone who has a lot of food marketing background. Do you happen to have it? Would you ever be interested in teaching? And I said, well, yeah, that would be great. That was always another life mission of, I had some amazing adjuncts at Simon School, and I wanted to be able to pay that forward at some point. But again, didn't think it would be this part of my career that I'd be doing it. And so I went and spoke with the group there, and we totally vibed, and they loved my background. I wanted to teach, and it's turned into now a 2-year venture. I just finished my 2nd year teaching, and it's been awesome.
Awesome.
So yeah, that's kind of the
Legals.
quick background.
Yeah, go Perps. We were talking off air, right, about, again, back to that, having me in to chat with your class. It was really a Q&A. I was so impressed by the questions that your students had for me, and just how energized they were about, entrepreneurship and what that looks like. So, you talked about change, and something that is constant, right? It's probably the only constant in our lives.
Agreed.
I'm curious to just learn a bit more too, like in terms of how you've been able to blend the work you're doing at Niagara as a professor, taking what you've learned in your career and some incredible career stops you've had, many. Curious to know kind of how you are inspiring that next generation, with again, that concept of finding your true north, that book that you referenced.
Yeah. So I have to give credit where credit is due. We had a board member at Niagara University's Food Marketing Centers of Excellence who really turned me on to the book called True North. And the message just rang true. And because there's so many, thinking about the students, they're so focused on the life plan, the typical template of, in 5 years, I'm going to get married. In 2 more years, I'm going to have a kid. And like, what does that progression look like based on a plan? And I always question, where did that come from? Why do we have to do it that way? Why does it have to be done that way? So the book talks about finding what your true north is. What is your purpose? What's going to excite you every day? Because yes, we all have to work, or I shouldn't say all of us, but we do have to work. There should be an element of that, but it should be purposeful and it should be fulfilling. And I've been lucky in my career with all of my jobs that I have had that, but none more so than now, certainly with what I'm doing and I've been able to build. And being able to teach the students also helps with that. So one of the big things that I talk to them about is, I teach a lot of upperclassmen. I teach mostly upperclassmen. And especially in the spring semester, they're all worried about finding jobs and stressed out, and understandably so. But I try to remind them that their first job is likely not going to be their last job. So I always ask them the question, what's going to be more important to you, function or industry? If you are dead set on marketing as a function and you want to work in marketing, just get a job in marketing. It doesn't matter what country, what company, what industry, just get your foot in the door so you can start building up your resume. It may not be the perfect dream job, but get the experience in marketing so you can build your toolbox. But if industry is more your thing and you're desperate to work in the fashion industry, then it doesn't matter what function you have in the fashion industry. Find a job in the fashion industry and you'll be able to work towards whatever that dream job is. So those are kind of the 2 things that I try to remind them. And then I always bring in guest speakers such as yourself, because I think it's really important to balance the book work with real life work. And what are the opportunities that exist out there for them? Because even when I was in school, and I'm sure when you were in school, there's so many more things out there that exist that we have no idea about. Like, I didn't learn about brand management until the end of my college career. And I was like, what's that? That sounds amazing. Right. So I'm trying to help them expand what their understanding of opportunities are and what career paths look like, and that no career path is the same as the other. And even if you get your degree in one thing, you may not wind up working in that. You may wind up working in something completely different, and that's okay. I'm just trying to relieve their stress. And then I also do tend to put them through a job clinic that I've created towards the end of the semester, just to help them with resume from a hiring manager perspective. So
excellent. No, I love it. And couple that in, if you would, for me with, entrepreneurship, right? And how it came about in your life, and this
Yeah.
concept of solopreneurship, which I know I said again prior to we started recording. Selfishly for myself, I often do this with my guests. It's like, I'll think about something that, I'm interested in learning about, and then, definitely try to objectively think, will this resonate with a wide range of others? And I think nowadays, with the Great Resignation and just the cachet that entrepreneurship carries, and even just this one person show, one man band kind of mentality, I'm curious to hear from you on your take on what it's been like. You start this company 2.5, 3 years ago, I think, given is that timeline, right? What's it
Yes.
been like
Wow.
for you?
Yeah.
Yeah, what's it been like for you?
So, it came about from all of my experiences and the fact that I feel like my background and experiences can be leveraged for a lot of different reasons, um, hopefully to the advantage of a lot of different people. One of the biggest things that I always thought about, though, was as I would go through those interviewing processes, obviously you're trying to get your law of numbers up. And so you're talking to a lot of companies. And I found some really great companies in the Buffalo area that were small to medium sized businesses that loved me. And they're like, we love you, but we can't afford you. And I always lamented not being able to sidestep and just take the job because I wanted to help them so badly. And that's where I started thinking, well, what if, which is always a great question to ask, what if I could sidestep, but I wouldn't just work for one, I could stack a couple of them together to be white label myself as their marketing director or their CMO, however they need it, and provide them all of my years of experience and strategy without them having to pay the full-time employee prices and overheads and all of the things that come with that, when maybe the strategic marketing isn't a main line item for them. And I could then work with them on their terms, on their budgets, and I just stack it as long as they're cool with me working remotely and coming in for meetings that are important, and that I'm not dedicated to them 100% of the time. Why not? So that's where I started thinking about it. And then it was more about shifting the mindset and the energy, because you've going out on your own is scary. And
Yeah.
it's easy to let that overwhelm you and go, where the heck do I start? And who do I talk to? And can I talk to anyone about this idea? So it was really shifting the energy. And what I found out I was doing later on, like a year later, was manifesting. I didn't even know that that was a thing.
Yeah.
But it was really trying to focus all of my energy on what I wanted to do and why I wanted to do it. It wasn't just about getting a job. It was about creating and curating a set of clientele that I loved working with, that I knew I could help, and what would my ultimate benefit or strategy be out of that. And it was just being able to be happy with what I was doing and knowing that I was helping companies that would otherwise not have access to the experiences and the strategy that I know I'm capable of. So that's where it kind of happened. And that was a huge mindset shift for me just in general in life, was shifting that energy to focusing on, okay, just because it doesn't go the way that I planned doesn't mean that it wasn't supposed to go that way. And there's going to be something that comes out of it. It's all the old adages of when a door closes, a window opens, all of those types of things, but it's really true.
Yeah, I can definitely, everything you've said there resonates with me. 15 months into my show with, Power of Osmosis Consulting. And it's something, even just using this week, completely candid as I always am. Monday was a rock star day, a lot of calls, a lot of meetings, a lot of energy, movement, momentum. And then yesterday, for whatever reason, sometimes there is no rhyme or reason. You wake up and something's just off, and maybe your day's not as populated, or you're not doing some of the things that you were doing days prior. And, you realize, well, shoot, like, where do I go from here? And then not even mention, but once you become aware of that, right, you see the memes out there, right? The life of an entrepreneur, 6 a.m. wake up, workout, it's great. 8 a.m., email comes in. Oh my God, the world's on fire. 10 a.m., I close the deal. I'm on top of the world. Noon, right? So you get the picture. And
yeah.
So I'm curious from you, as someone who's been at this now for going on 3 years, how do you stay balanced, right? How do you fight the How do you balance that Monday that I had with the Tuesday that I had?
Yeah, I think it's the breathing, the deep breath I just took. I do a lot of that. If you're ever sitting next to me, I'm going, it's more so just like, okay, we're centering right now. We're going to let that one go so we don't say something we're not supposed to or react the way we're not supposed to.
Yep.
But I mean, it's all about balance, right? So I think a lot of it does go back to the mindset, and you have to get through a lot to get to where we are. I mean, 15 months in, almost, I mean, I'm over counting? 2.5 years at this point. I'll be 3 in May. So, which is incredible to me. And it doesn't feel like 3 years. So I know I'm doing what I need to be doing.
Right.
But it's being excited about what you can do. It's understanding that when those lulls happen, that's your sign to take a beat and rest and allow yourself to rest, because you can't serve others if you yourself are not full, if your cup is not overflowing. So I've gotten a lot better about being able to be mindful of those opportunities to rest and not looking at them as, okay, what did I do wrong? What am I not doing? I knew there's something wrong here, and really seeing it as an opportunity to take a beat, take a rest. And the fact that I get to pivot however I need to accommodate family life too. I mean, I have a daughter, I have a husband, it's lots of things going on. She's involved in a lot of things. Our schedules are always crazy. So the fact that I have the ability to pivot also brings a sense of relief, so that when I do have those low days, they're balanced with the high days.
Love that. Yeah, the rejuvenation, recovery, rest, put things in perspective too, right? You mentioned earlier how scary this can be. So it's not like not necessarily a warning to those that are interested in it. It's just be ready for it. It's coming. It's not,
exactly.
There nothing worth doing is easy, right? And again, we can say, but it's something. I mean, it's full contact. Honestly, I want to, if I could, real time. Yesterday, because I was feeling that, and I want to read something that I posted that I'm curious to get your take on. Right, so just total stream of consciousness. I put this out on LinkedIn yesterday, midday.
I think I saw it and loved it, so I know what you're going to go for. But that's why I'm going. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. So, entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart, nor is creating something. Same with working through self-discovery to find who you truly are, what your most authentic life mission is, why you are here. Equally as difficult as believing in yourself that you are needed, your voice, your energy, your mission, your presence, your uniqueness. Because while you go through your journeys of growth, something I think that you were mentioning too here earlier, you are inspiring someone else somewhere in the world to do the same, to start, to have courage, to keep asking questions of yourself, of those around you, and of the world, to build when feeling broken, to believe, to serve as a reference point. Because if in quotes, he or quotes, she, or quotes they did it against insurmountable odds, I can do it too. Let's go. So, that spot on. It's something, because I even about, not, that sounded weird. I don't mean, I even think about you, Sarah, and how you've gotten to this point. I don't mean it like that, but I thought about your journey and so many others that have done it, right? They've done, like, if they can do it, we can do it. Right. And so you can see I'm getting energized here, but it isn't. But it's your skin is in it, right? Like, sink or swim. If you're working for a company where you're kind of like, maybe you don't really know where your place is, or you feel like a bit taken for granted, whatever it is, just hypothetically, it can be really easy to just say, screw it, I'll mail it in today. But when it's your brand, your reputation, that's why it is scary. That's why, you are committed and resolved to seeing it through.
Yeah. Well, and that's where I think it's really important that that you go into this eyes wide open. It's not easy. And that's where I always think of the League of Their Own quote from Tom Hanks: if it was easy, everyone would do it. It's the hard that makes it great. You have to know that it's not going to be something where you're going to walk in and the next day you're going to have a client, you're going to start making lots of money. And it's hard. I mean, when I started this, it was probably about a 7 to 8 month sales cycle for me before I got my first true client and engagement. And in that meantime, I was mainlining coffee with the number of coffee meetings I would have. Like I was back to back to back with coffee networking meetings. And every single one of them, I was starting to drink coffee. I was like, maybe I should back up on this and maybe start some green tea instead, because I'm twitchy. But I also have to say that I know my sales cycle would have been longer and I would not have been as successful if it wasn't for all of the people in Western New York that I was able to reach out to that did provide the guidance. I don't know that I would have been as successful as quickly as I was without this Western New York community if I was trying to do it somewhere else. Western New York community is unique, and it is one big living room, and someone that I'm talking to, whether we do the same thing or not, is more than willing to talk to me about how they built their business and introduce me to someone else that might work. And one of the people that I spoke with at the time that, again, started their own marketing thing. They consider themselves more of a marketing consultant, but they were like, of course, I'm happy to talk to you. There's more than enough business to go around here. And what I do is different from what you do. So it was just really refreshing and reassuring. And I shouldn't have been surprised, but I was, that I was able to reach out to so many entrepreneurs in this space, and they were willing to talk to me about their journeys and give me their life lessons and watch outs and be careful of this and try this, or I tried it this way, you may want to try it that way. If I hadn't gotten all of those inputs, it may have been a 12 to 16 month cycle. I don't know, but that's what's so special about this area too.
Right on. Yeah. Well said. That is something that I can also give a hearty here and support on, is that, yeah, for sure. I mean, it's amazing to see the support network that we have here. That's why, there's so many folks that love it here, that come back and get the support that they need. I wanted to shift gears a little. I had one thing pop in mind from my notes here in prep for this, for our podcast today. Something that was cool that we collaborated on earlier in the year that really was a hit with your students at Niagara, with elements of entrepreneurship at the core, right? And this thing called, right, do things differently, to live differently, to achieve differently. And in this case, we collaborated, kind of a bag golf business school times NUMA, right, Niagara University Marketing Association, with the golf thing. Why don't, just for fun to share that? I figured it'd be fun to kind of put that out there.
Well, and it was so wonderful. So what we were trying to do within, I'm the advisor for NUMA, on top of also being the advisor for a competition team that we take into the food industry. That's actually going to happen next year, thankfully.
That's
so one of the things we were talking about, we were like, well, what do we want to do for our end of the year celebration? And a big thing for me is, if you're going into business, you need to know how to play golf. You don't need to be great at it, but you need to understand the concept of the game. Mostly, especially if you're not going to just like go out and play 18 holes all the time, then you at least need to understand how scrambles work, because that's probably what you're going to be doing, and know how to swing a club so that you don't pull a Happy Gilmore. So you want to make sure that you can represent yourself accordingly, because you're probably going to have to represent your company. And I so thank my parents, and especially my mother, for reinforcing that, because I picked up golf in grad school, got my first set of clubs. And when I wound up working at Winn-Dixie, I had to play in a couple pro-ams at Winn-Dixie.
Wow.
And playing on TPC, Sawgrass, Dyes Valley courses, like, that's super intimidating. And you're playing with professionals as well. So it was super fun, but thank God I knew how to swing a club and I didn't make a complete fool of myself. So again, and thinking about what are my life lessons that I'd like to pass on to these students, that was one of them. And so I said, why don't we do some sort of golf thing where we can introduce some of these kids to golfing, and at least have them swing a club and maybe get them interested. So when I was thinking of who in my Rolodex could I reach out to that would know this, oh wait, John, you're the easy one to call. So John, I have these students. What do we do? How do we make this happen? And you took it from there, and it was wonderful. But the students had a really great time. They really enjoyed Brian coming out and helping and learning how to swing. I mean, a lot of them had never even touched a club before. So mission accomplished.
Yeah. Excuse me. It's all about impact. And it was cool because there were some entrepreneurial flares with Bag Golf Business School. It's a group that I, along with a couple others, co-founded a couple of years ago that we need to resurrect.
Yes, we do.
Like a mini reboot back in May of this year, which was a lot of fun. But getting to know the students, hearing their plans, a lot of them had entrepreneurship in mind or some form of it. And even something I've talked about in other podcast episodes, entrepreneurship. And I also talked about that at the talk, with the students. And, you don't have to go out necessarily right away to start your own thing, but you can operate like an entrepreneur within an organization, within a company, a corporation. So I love that. That was fun. I just figured, because it was, again, true to the ethos of that true north, right? Learn by doing, experiential, and doing things differently, right? How do we cut through the noise? Because there's a lot of it.
And a lot of business is done on the golf course. So they need to be comfortable to be able to do that and have those types of conversations. And I want to touch on the whole entrepreneurship. So
please.
It's not that I don't believe that someone can come out of school and become an entrepreneur. I think they have a lot of tools that they have access to that they can be very successful. But what I will say, and I'm sure you found as well, is all of the different roles that I've had in corporate have prepared me to be able to jump into this. Again, eyes wide open. But had I not worked at an advertising agency, I wouldn't know the difference between cost plus pricing and value pricing and how to build out my algorithm and model of working. Had I not worked at another company, I wouldn't have learned new business strategies. And I certainly learned them from my parents and their business. And they talked me through that as well. But having that hands-on experience and being able to do it, quote unquote, on someone else's dime and learn the ins and outs and skills and where are you comfortable and where are your strengths versus your weaknesses, I think helped build me into being able to translate that into the entrepreneurship piece. And having worked on big strategic campaigns at large corporations and having pivoted and taken my sabbatical from marketing into operations and merchandising, such that now most of my career has been spent in food marketing. So that's what then lent myself being interesting enough to Niagara University to hire for a faculty fellow in food marketing. So I think that there's a lot of lessons that can be learned if you're patient enough to go through that and get those corporate experiences. And they can definitely be leveraged to your advantage in the future. But again, that's not to say that someone can't just jump right into it without having those experiences. But I again, don't know that I would be where I am today without having had those.
And speaking of lessons, probably a couple quick things here, not quick, but a couple more items to cover. And then we'll adjourn this first iteration of our podcasting together. But you touch on lessons. What are some lessons that you give to the audience? Some phrases or thoughts, concepts that would be good takeaways from this conversation?
Sure. So I have three. I thought about this again in the prep of this podcast. Of what are some things that I've lived by that have really helped me be successful. And again, a lot of these come from my parents, especially my mom. In they're three truisms. And what's the worst that happens is that they say no.
Right on.
Try anyways. Always fail forward. You never know what will work. And say yes and figure it out later. Yeah.
Done that.
You can't possibly know everything. And if that's going to stop you from doing something, then how are you going to get that experience? How are you going to learn? So again, a lot of my success, I have to call out to my mom and my dad, because they have been so incredibly supportive and helpful and given me guidance. And you need those cheerleaders in the back corner, because there are going to be those days that you self-doubt. There are going to be those days that you're like, what am I doing? I'm not capable. And so you need those. So my parents, my husband, my friends, I've been very lucky to have the support system that I have, but it also has to come from yourself and internally, because you can't just rely on them. You need to be able to rely on yourself. And so that's where those are things that, had I not taken to heart, I would not have been as successful as I was.
Powerful. Yeah. Mama Hex, she's a rock star. Speaking of golf.
Daddy Hex is too. He's just in a completely different, he was senior project manager at Moog. So he was more on the organization timelines and technical writing and everything. And then Mama Hex was business development. So yeah, a pretty dynamic duo that I got to learn from.
Rock star. Power couple. I love it. Those were powerful. I mean, all three of them, especially that no, I certainly used to hide from it. Just finding a way to create language, create a mechanism in outreach and connectivity with people. If you can get to that no faster, it's going to save you time. It's going to save you mind space. Right. And that's cool. Les Brown, motivational speaker, talks about, be hungry for the no, make it your vitamin. And it's true.
I like that.
It's not fun, right? Sometimes, but once you get to a place
No.
where you can separate, right? Like whether it is true or not, just separating that there's a no happening here. It's not the person or the company. It's just, that's what's happened. It's not a fit right now, whatever the reasoning,
Exactly.
move on. And I love that the failure thing too, right? That's another one, right? People that I've had a lot of conversations recently with some incredible people where failures come up. And right, that to me those are just, again, cliche a little bit, but it's just a reality. They are stepping stones to that win, right? It's not win or learn. It's it's not win or lose. Excuse me. It's win or learn.
Right.
So just adding those. Lastly, then Sarah, Prof. Sarah, how do we find you and True Colors Strategy? How do we connect?
So I have a website, truecolorsstrategy.com. The colors is plural. You can find me on Facebook, on LinkedIn. I have pages for the company there, but then you can also find me specifically on LinkedIn under Sarah Heximer. And yeah, love to connect for sure.
Rock out. Well, I'm looking forward to collaborating further. I've learned a lot and just sitting here and being with you and spending time virtually. So I appreciate that. And I'm excited to get this out to the masses so that, folks that can, again, those two just, I think they're so important. It's the true north, really that life mission purpose and having it top of mind every day. That's going to be one of the keys to getting through those valleys that one will experience especially in the beginnings, probably more often than not. And then that manifesting and coming into solopreneurship, entrepreneurship, what that looks like and the lessons learned during it. So I appreciate your time. And speaking of appreciation, shout out to, as always, at the end of my episodes, to Video Creator Network for the kit, for the support, for the know-how, the knowledge here in Buffalo. Neil Cara, my great friend there. Thanks again for your time, Sarah, and we'll see everyone on the next segment.
Thank you.
Talk soon. Take care.
Okay.
Thanks.
Bye.